Hey everybody, welcome to the Level 1 News. Today is April 13th. Today we're doing government and security.
It's Friday the 13th.
Oh, no it's not.
Tuesday the 13th.
It's Tuesday the 13th. Today's Friday when we're recording.
My brain is broken.
Tuesday the 13th is a different villain. He's
yes.
much less effective.
Yeah, less scary.
He mostly just kills people by giving them salty and sweet snacks. So eventually.
That would definitely be my Achilles heel. Would you like some more M&Ms? Oh, no, no, please, no.
And for those of you who are constantly leaving us comments, here's a trigger warning. Bloomberg stories ahead.
We actually had to address it in the Q&A. We recorded the Q&A yesterday. Probably by the time this goes up, it'll be on. But we talked about Bloomberg specifically.
Now, admittedly, I could have found a paywall alternative for this one, but we were all running a little late this week. So
That's fine.
We will talk about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is active right now. They are not always, but right now they're getting a lot done. They're making big decisions. And this one was one that two certain parties have been waiting on breathlessly. And I think it went in the direction that it should have. Would you not agree?
Yeah.
I mean, there's some nuances to it, I'm sure, but otherwise I think it would be too restrictive for us.
The Supreme Court has ruled in favor of Google in Google versus Oracle on that whole is an API copyrightable pesky business. Although cleverly, you got to hand it up to them. They're clever because a big issue central to the case is API copyrightable? And in their ruling, they expressly said, let us assume that they are, but note that we're not ruling on that. They might not be copyrightable, but let's assume that they are. And even if they are copyrightable, it said that Google's nature and scope of the copying was such that Oracle doesn't have a leg to stand on.
A lot of money at risk there. And this is the final. A lot of times when you see these stories, it's like, oh, the appeals court has decided. That's not the end of it. This is the end of it.
Yeah.
It's over.
I bet Larry Ellison. Well, the thing that's going to happen with Java now is Oracle is going to abandon it. Since it's not a source of money from litigation, they're not going to care anymore. Or they're going to change it to make it horrible. If you'd like precedent for that, see also Hudson versus Jenkins. Jenkins is wonderful and amazing. Hudson is a steaming pile of crap now.
Do you think there was cake in the Google conference room?
Yes. I think that all
Congrats
of Google
on
got
the court rules.
they got the day off. Like
No,
they just got it.
they wouldn't go that far.
No, they did. They randomly got a day off. The Googlers did like a week ago. It was just it's just like, okay, we're gonna take today off. Good luck, everybody. Mental health day, whatever.
Well, the U.S. government has also been doing some work. And it's weird because we thought we might see a little bit of a reversal in this trend with the incoming administration. But so far, nope. They've been doing pretty much the same thing.
The U.S. adds Chinese supercomputing entities to the economic blacklist. These are the creatively named like Hong Kong Center for Supercomputing, Shaoxin's Center for Supercomputing,
Tianjin Fidium Information Technology, of course.
Of course.
Who else?
Listening to you guys try to pronounce this is just wonderful. And I'm sure we'll get corrections.
Oh, yes.
So this blocks even American companies from even doing business with them, giving them parts and stuff like that. But it doesn't affect whatever's in the air before this took effect.
Yeah.
How many orders do you think went in?
Or in process. Like,
Yeah.
well, let's just backdate those orders real quick. There we go. I don't know how much of a problem this really is because the component shortage is real. Like, you can't even get basic stuff anymore. It's like, I'd like some ceramic capacitors. No.
And those components, for the most part, I don't think coming from here.
No, yeah.
They're already there.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of a dumb fight to pick, right? Because if they did it to us, it'd be way worse.
Yeah.
Although it's already happening without their input. The FTC has weighed in on some more of the antitrust rulings. This is nothing that, this doesn't have any weight in terms of law. They are just strongly suggesting.
The FTC urges courts not to dismiss the Facebook antitrust case. The FTC blasts the anti-competitive actions to neutralize, hinder, or deter competitors. One of the big things in here is when Instagram was just 13 people, Instagram or Facebook bought them for $1 billion.
And WhatsApp.
And stuff like that.
And a bunch of other ones. Those were just the big ones.
A bunch of the emails in Discovery were literally Mark Zuckerberg saying, We see a lot of data from users leaving to Instagram, and we like what Instagram has. Eventually, they will compete with us. We should just buy them. It's like, oh, that's not something you should put in email. It turns out that's a little anti-competitive.
A little anti-competitive.
Just a little.
Just a touch.
Smidge. This is a great picture of the Zuck.
I don't know. I don't think it really captures him. He looks kind of sleep deprived, and I don't know.
What is this feeling I'm feeling? It is anger, sir.
That hairline's creeping back. I know that feel. Some other things that the U.S. government has been worried about lately, and for those people who think that the government is kind of in bed with the big tech companies, this isn't going to make you feel any better.
Nope.
Because they're kind of going to bat for them. Now, this is also money that would presumably trickle into our shared coffers. Although, when you look at the actual numbers, maybe not so much.
The U.S. forges ahead on $1 billion tariff plan over digital taxes. So the U.S. is planning to levy tariffs on companies that are charging tax on digital transactions. So if you want to import an Austrian piano, you're not going to be able to do that because Austria charges taxes on digital goods.
And a lot of countries are planning this. So this would mostly hurt the consumer, especially if you like weird foreign stuff.
Yep.
It's going to go up by 25-30%. And I don't think that the companies will eat that cost.
Yeah. Video cards from China are still got a 25% premium, and people are still buying them like crazy, although they're salty about it.
Yeah. Well. The another thing Congress has weighed in on has to do with, of course, foreign spying. And when we talk about foreign spying, we're not talking about, like spooks on the ground type of stuff or satellite surveillance anymore. Sure, we do that, but more importantly, it's gone into the digital world. And you have to think about all the different vectors that can get to China, and there's so many.
Congress says foreign intel services could abuse ad networks for spying. To me, this is a tacit admission that our own foreign intel services have already been abusing the ad networks for spying.
We're positive this could happen. How do you know? What?
Don't worry about it.
Who? Let's talk about China. So yeah, they're saying that this is the bid stream, like the whole Google thing where they do, and the act of bidding and seeing the results of those bids could be used by a foreign entity to learn things.
Just because it doesn't run their ad doesn't mean they didn't get data out of it, in other words.
And they believe that some of these people are stockpiling that data and then trying to marry the information they get there to the actual profile. At that point, they've got you.
Remember the Facebook ads where they were targeting like one or two people specifically? It's like, I want to see if I can advertise to this specific person, and you could totally do that. It's like that.
And if you're a high-level executive in a publicly traded company, I'm going to give you a huge PR piece of advice for 2021. And it's real easy, but you won't follow it because you love money too much. But you should, because it's easy PR. Don't do business with ICE. People will immediately find out, and they won't like it.
LexisNexis to provide giant database of personal information to ICE. I read through this, it seemed like all the standard stuff, but wait a minute. It turns out LexisNexis has access to that database of license plate scanning, is what it looks like, because the license plate scan data was named as one of the things that they're interested in.
But it's worse than that, because LexisNexis, they scrape everything to do with legality, and you can't opt out of any of that. It's
public record.
If I were to sue Wendell, both of our information would go into a court case. LexisNexis would have that, and they could sell it. And that's a lot of information.
Yeah.
And you can't just say no, or else you're going to lose the case.
Yeah, even if it doesn't make it all the way to the case, just starting an action, even if it goes to arbitration or whatever, there's a little bit of a record left in that in LexisNexis. You could find out a lot of interesting stuff.
And it turns out you can buy it if you're with the right organization. This is an interesting story, and this comes down to the whole Uber thing. And those people are supposed to be independent contractors, although now in California they're not, and in certain parts of Europe they're not. So it's a weird Schrodinger's contractor kind of situation going on there. But the question is, if the Uber driver does something as an independent contractor, is the company liable for that? And we kind of have our answer here.
Uber ordered to pay $1.1 million to blind passenger who was denied rides 14 times. Although there was a lot of evidence that came out in this that did not paint Uber in a good light. I think a large part of the ruling was not because of the drivers, an independent contractor, but specifically because Uber coached the drivers on how to try to decline the ride in a way that doesn't run afoul of the ADA laws.
The thing at odds here was, can the dog come in the car? Now, by law, a dog is basically a human.
Yeah.
And you have to let it. But the coaching that they uncovered was that they told the Uber drivers, you can't discount them because of the dog, but you could find 100 other reasons. And here's a list that you can choose from.
Wow.
Kind
of like when a cop can't arrest you for what they're mad about. There's so many other things.
It seems like you're resisting arrest. You're arresting me but why? Why are you resisting arrest? I don't understand.
And I was so excited about this story because, you know, all the Bloomberg haters. And it's like, oh, this is a story not on Bloomberg, but about them. And they have not actually accused the Bloomberg writer of anything, but it seems a little fishy, don't you think?
Yeah.
An insider trading indictment shows ties to Bloomberg News scoops. So it's the feds are making a case against this guy, saying that he used his position at Bloomberg News to execute
it's
trades.
a different guy.
Oh,
he
had information from someone at Bloomberg.
So they tracked his trades, and then they checked the timestamps of his trades against the Bloomberg articles, and they were like 5 minutes ahead every time. And this guy was a contributor on every article. He didn't write every article, but there was no article that was used for this that he didn't contribute to.
Interesting.
So it's pretty good circumstantial evidence. And these were mergers and acquisitions, so it certainly seems like this guy found out about 5 minutes ahead of time and traded heavily and made a lot of money.
It's just like that one time that the Chicago Board of Trade executed all those trades because they superluminally knew about the crop futures that were coming in New York.
What about those times that a bunch of people made trades based on those buildings falling down?
Huh. They knew a little ahead of time.
Ugh.
Looks weird.
How would they know that?
That one guy had two insurance policies that were both $1 billion that paid out separately. How crazy is that?
That had just been purchased.
Yeah. That's so strange.
Well, the Supreme Court doesn't just offer rulings. Sometimes they give opinions, and they write these opinions, and they carry a lot of weight because we care about these people for whatever reason. And this one is something that a lot of tech people have been screaming for a long time.
Justice Thomas argues for making Facebook, Twitter, and Google utilities. Not a great take. Justice Thomas definitely doesn't understand technology, but perhaps the underpinning messaging technology does make sense as a utility, or perhaps this is an argument for, an open standard. Jack Dorsey of Twitter has often argued for that. Hey, if we had a messaging platform that would let you take your tweets and awfulness and go to another platform wholesale, we would support that.
So this is all about... the big thing that he cited was Trump, of course. So if we argue that it is a public utility, then they couldn't have gotten rid of Trump. But also Trump would have lost his bid to be able to block people. Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
Because are you not allowed the same access as everybody else? It's like if they're just turning your water off. So it's not quite the same. I mean, water is a little more important to the life than Twitter.
Yeah, social media.
But even I would agree with that, and that's really saying something.
And you might not even choose water every time. But there is an argument that, like, more and more, social media is a requirement just for going about your daily life.
Just to have that human connection.
No, just to, like,
or things like Marketplace or, get hold of a business, find out their hours, get a menu for a restaurant.
Imagine you're banned from Twitter, and then you get your Google account gets trashed.
Oh, the Google account being trashed is like that's like a death sentence.
But the only way to deal with the Google account being trashed is if you have enough Twitter followers and you tweet at Google.
Yeah.
But if you're banned from Twitter,
it's over.
Huh? Is that like having your electricity turned off?
I still don't think so, but maybe.
It's an interesting argument. I'm glad I don't have to make that decision.
Yeah, same.
Amazon is, could you say they're in the fight of their life right now?
With the unionization?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not just in the U.S. They're overseas. They're having some union issues as well. And
although one of our other stories in business reveals a little bit about Mr. Jeff Bezos' strategy for dealing with this, and I got to say, it's brilliant.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that later. But it's a clear cause and effect.
Yeah.
But one thing we've learned about Amazon that I don't think anybody would question, except for the Amazon PR team, is that they're willing to go pretty low to fight the unions. They're willing to get in the gutter, get a little dirty, bite, scratch, fish hook, whatever they got to do. And sometimes they might cross the line.
Amazon illegally fired activist workers, the labor board finds. So there were 2 people inside Amazon, and they were doing everything within the rules, and Amazon was like, what are you doing? Are you not happy? Like, no, I'm perfectly happy here. It's like, oh, it seems like you're really just causing a lot of trouble. We got to fire you. Wait, what? It turns out that's illegal.
Take your piss bottles and leave.
There was actually 3 of them. There were the 2 women, and then there was another guy.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all doing the same thing. They were trying to call attention to the whole unionization and workplace safety. And
one of them was a really high up executive.
Yeah. These weren't warehouse workers at all. So kind of like the Google thing.
Yeah.
It's harder to ignore this.
Yeah, the one high up executive, I read some of the stuff that she wrote, and it was like, we're always working on making these things better at Amazon. I'm making a list. We've done these things right. So, I mean, it didn't seem like she was super adversarial, but at the same time, she didn't seem like she was actually campaigning for worker rights.
I think the Amazon threshold for adversarial is different than yours.
Yeah.
It's a little more sensitive. Right to repair is a big thing right now. There's that whole grassroots lobbying effort that what's his name is doing. I don't think that's going to get much traction, but we can hope. However, when we look at this headline, perhaps that hope will be extinguished because there was no reason for this. This was clearly not the will of the people after the hearing that they had.
Colorado denied its citizens the right to repair after riveting testimony. So there was lots of amazing stuff in there. One of the things was like, well, if unlicensed people repair your wheelchair, it'll catch on fire. And somebody testified, licensed people repaired my wheelchair and it caught on fire anyway.
Well, one of the guys too mentioned, he was like, I needed my wheelchair fixed, and it took him 2 months to get it. And he's like, it was just something that could have been done at home, but I would have voided the warranty.
Yeah, and he had to have the wheelchair to go about all of his life. He was basically just stuck at home until he could get that done. And the argument that they gave against it when they voted against it was that we just don't have enough information, and I don't feel like our questions were properly answered by this hearing. But here's the kicker. They didn't really ask any questions.
Yeah.
They did not. And it's not. They didn't say no, but they tabled it indefinitely.
Yeah.
So we really need the right to repair farm equipment and everything else, and documentation on that. This was also an 11-page bill, which wasn't really super hard to read, and they said it was overly broad. And it's like, it's pretty plain language.
But what we really need is someone in power to express the idea that we don't need the right to repair. That is not a right that a government organization has the power to grant. This is the opposite. This is oppression. We should not be oppressed when trying to repair our devices. So we need to change the language here.
One of the politicians in this was actually quoted as saying, Apple should get to dictate how you use their device after the sale. Oh, what's that sound?
Krista, what is that?
Someone just gunning their truck up the road. Sorry.
Wow.
I
thought you weren't even that close to the road.
I'm not that close to the road, and usually it's pretty quiet, but this guy has decided he just wants to gun it, I guess.
What a cool guy.
Yeah. But he has a massive,
What you were saying something.
Oh yeah, one of the politicians said something about Apple. Apple should have the right to choose how people use their devices after the sale. And it's like, did you not? Do you know nothing of history? The first sale doctrine, when book publishing was getting popular, book publishers were like, when you open this book, you agree not to resell it or sell it used or loan it to anybody. And that was before computers.
That's such a stupid argument.
Yeah.
The other thing they mentioned in this article is someone was like, this is awful for the planet too, because what happens is that instead of being able to repair stuff, people just end up buying new all the time. And then we just generate more trash. And they're like, whatever. That's someone else's problem.
And there's also, I think, the argument, if you boil down the argument from the other side, it is, if you don't like their terms, don't buy their product. And could we not just turn that argument completely around and change the subjects and say, if they don't like me doing what I want with it, don't sell it to me? Same argument, same stupidity. Shopify had a little bit of a data breach. And this is one of those data breaches that, like, it was kind of a hack, but not really. But it resulted in the same thing. And one man has been discovered being responsible.
U.S. charges California man over Shopify data breach. How did he breach the data? He paid the people in the Philippines that were running Shopify's customer support in cryptocurrency and other bribes in order to get access to Shopify customers' back end. That's it.
And he appeared to be doing this. There was no direct monetization, right? He was using this for competitive data or something. So I guess he was in some position to really benefit from that. More than, was it like $800 he was paying them?
Yeah.
Per thing? But he got caught.
It was effective.
A while back, we had the big controversy and the adpocalypse and then the other adpocalypse. And it's all based around protecting the kids. If I say some sort of foul word or even a dictionary of other words that I'm not even sure what that list is, it's not acceptable to the kids and we must be punished for it. And so even that didn't work and YouTube decided to try something new. It's not good.
The BBC has the article on YouTube kids being a vapid wasteland, according to U.S. lawmakers. Why did the BBC article turn out to be one of the better articles on this? No one else covered this.
That's a common thing.
Yeah.
BBC, for all their faults. Well, it's kind of like, I've talked about this before. If you want to know what the left wing is doing wrong, you watch Fox News or OAN or one of those other things. If you want to know what the right wing is doing wrong, you watch CNN and MSNBC and all that. But you have to watch both and only take the negatives because everything else is a lie. And I think BBC is really good at reporting our news reliably. By that same token. But they pointed out that almost all the videos they reviewed were just unashamed product placement.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. Kids are probably the most susceptible to that kind of thing.
That was basically Transformers in the 80s, though.
I wanted those Masters of the Universe action figures so bad. And some of the more rare ones were almost impossible to find here in good old Kentucky. They didn't ship a lot of them out.
They didn't think that anybody would possibly buy such a terrible, crappy toy. How wrong they were.
Those mountain folk are never going to want a glow-in-the-dark Skeletor, but I wanted it.
That's true with the kids' YouTube thing, though. Like, there are whole channels that are dedicated just to, like, buy this, like, sparkly silly putty, and then they'll do, like, a review of the toy.
Yeah,
it's like a whole influencer network just for kids, which is bizarre.
That was exactly what they were talking about, and the majority of the videos were apparently that. Was it like 1 in 5 was actual educational material?
Yeah.
I mean, telling you about a toy is technically education, but I think they were looking more about core.
Remember, kids, it's only slightly radioactive.
Do the math. See how many weeks do you have to save your allowance to be able to buy this toy?
And how many microsieverts? That's like a reading problem for math. After 4 years of playing with the putty, little Timmy will have this amount of radiation. How many bananas would little Timmy have to eat to equal 1 week of silicon?
19 bananas a day. The answer was 19.2 bananas a day.
Australia and China, they kind of got this like little frenemy thing going on because China loves Australia's coal. And I think a lot of Chinese people like to vacation there and stuff like that. But at the same time, that's a Western democracy. And they're not crazy about that.
Australian minister's phone hacked as report reveals a Hong Kong link. I was all excited that, so there's like political intrigue here, but the more I read it, the more I think that maybe there's not political intrigue, because one of the things that they did was try to do, they tried to impersonate the prime minister or somebody that is politically related to this particular minister, to get them to send money to them, which was, of course, a fake money, like it was a fake account.
But worse than that, and probably the real reason for it, they messaged as that guy to a contact that they found in his phone that the Chinese probably knew who that was, and said, hey, do you have any contacts in the Uyghur population? And the person who got that message, assuming it was the guy, was like, oh, yes, we do. Here's the list. And I wouldn't want to be one of those people right now.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate.
Things are not great in Hong Kong right now.
He got fished, I think. When are we going to... You know what we should do is... And of course, they would be the ones that would have to pass the law. But we need a law of minimum tech savvy for politicians. Because Clarence Thomas would fail it, I guarantee you. And so would Biden.
Yeah.
I think all of them would. I don't think there's any that are really tech savvy.
Bernie could probably pass 3/4 of it.
You think so? I mean, he's really old.
Yeah, he is very old. I mean, I like Bernie, but he's very old.
There have been a couple of things that made me think that he's reasonably computer literate, but maybe not.
This is where we're going to get angry comments from those old people in the audience. It's like, I'm old and I know about technology. I hope I'm one of those people.
AOC would be the most technically competent, and I don't know what that says about our future.
Did you see, of course, you know, I mean, they were just slandering her, but it's the truth. When it comes to passing laws, getting legislation adopted and then passed, she is dead last of all the lawmakers. She accomplished nothing. Some great photo ops, though. Can't argue with
not willing to compromise.
I don't know if it's that or if she's just out doing other stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I don't understand why you have to cbc.ca. Why do you have to shorten Saskatchewan here?
Probably because it takes up too much space when it's like in an aggregate.
There's plenty.
List.
Look at that second line, Krista. There's plenty of space.
I'm saying like when it's on another website though, and you want to have that teaser link. They want to make sure it's not just taken up with the name of the territory.
That's such a fun name to say, though.
It is.
So, what is ultimately going to come eventually, and it's going to be a little bit of cold water on companies like Tesla, is that not only are all those incentive programs going to run out, governments are going to get tired of not getting their piece of the pie. That's exactly what's happened here.
Sask government to roll out $150 annual tax for passenger electric vehicles. You put a tax on gasoline, you use that tax for road maintenance. What happens if your cars don't use gasoline anymore? Well, you're going to have to pay a lot more in taxes to offset that loss of income from gasoline.
So $150 a year. What do you think you pay an average on the gasoline tax? Probably more than that, right?
Yeah, I would think that it would be more. I mean, it's in the tens of cents per gallon here.
And gas is a lot more expensive in Canada.
Yeah.
There's
I'm
another
not
one.
mad about this. Yeah, there he goes. It's a different. I think it's a different trick. I wouldn't be mad about this. I mean, you know, you want to use the road, pay the tax.
We should put a little camera out there on your porch, Krista, and, you know, like make a little script that triggers on certain audio cues, and then we can do a website of loudest trucks at Krista's house.
I got to watch
Shame
a cat
on.
kill a bird in my front yard yesterday.
Oh, so excited.
Rue was really excited about that.
The cat probably didn't even care. It was like, all right, the toy is dead. Move on to the next one.
It ran off with it. I don't know where it went, but
They don't always eat them. They just love to kill. We had another big cyber attack last week, and I don't think at this point we have still not found out exactly how they got in, but of course everybody's expecting it was the exchange hack.
Yep.
Because that keeps
There's hints
paying
about
off.
that in there.
But high-level targets for sure.
European institutions were targeted in cyber attack last week. Like, this headline made me think, uh-oh, the cyber war is escalating, things are happening. No, this is just straight up unpatched exchange. And I've got news for you. If that was your biggest issue, or if that was the thing that you made the headlines over, they were already in. The Chinese and the Russians were like playing poker games over your compromised server long before the exchange hack hit.
They kept changing Boolean variables in different files to play tic-tac-toe. That's how bad it was. They
And you didn't even know until somebody else. That was the North Koreans that got in through exchange. They ruined everybody's fun.
This one's a little out of order because this is the government story. We'll have more about exactly what happened here, but this has to do with the regulators. And here's a question. What is the statute of limitation on a data breach? We've never explored that, have we?
The European Union's about to.
And can you be punished for it more than once if it resurfaces and causes damages a second time? These are questions that are going to have to be answered.
Facebook leak. Irish regulator probes quote-unquote old data dump. So this is the data. This is the 500 million phone numbers that we were talking about last week, and I think the week before. It was originally for sale on the dark web years ago. Well, now it's completely free. You can anybody can download it. In fact, it was, the Have I Been Pwned guy has updated that to also be, has your phone number been pwned? So it'll take an email address or a phone number now, which is pretty kick-ass. You should check that out.
So the Irish regulators are saying, hey, this caused damage. But Facebook is saying, dude, that was a year ago. Actually, almost 2 years ago at this point.
We already settled this with the EU?
Yeah. Lose our phone number is what they're saying. And I don't know if that's going to work out for them. Hopefully it doesn't, because that was ridiculous. And this was also Facebook is saying this was not a hack. This was terms of service violation from the API partners.
Neat.
Totally different. We know that anti-piracy at this point is almost completely automated. No one ever looks to see if these are real or not. They just shotgun blast, shut it all down with DMCA, and you get things like this.
This one was real. This is not the one you're thinking of.
Oh, you're right. I was thinking of the...
Yeah, that's in business.
Yeah.
Sky wins injunction to stop Reddit moderator from pirated TV shows. So, Sky TV, they were just... There's a guy on Reddit who was probably pirating and then posting links.
Probably? I mean, look at this.
It totally was.
He had a Patreon.
Yeah.
And the goal listed on the Patreon was to pirate stuff on Reddit. Not a smart man.
That's not okay.
So
they were able to track him down just by figuring out that he used to be a Sky subscriber.
Now, when you say that, and I'm certainly in agreement in most cases that copying is not stealing, but when you monetize the copies,
when you have a Patreon,
that's
maybe
too
it's
far.
time.
China, we've been talking about this for a long time, but it has finally happened. They've done it, and they're the first to do it.
This is from the Wall Street Journal. China creates its own digital currency, a first for their economy. So this is sort of the mainstream news. This is not really covering a lot that we haven't covered in the past, except that it's much more widespread now. Remember from like January, I think, we were talking about how it gave everybody in China, or everybody like the early adopters, like $20 to $30 in this currency, and it could be spent at like the local 7-Eleven because it would be processed through the normal payment processor. And how also China was really nervous about other electronic or cryptocurrency based payments like the Alipay or the Jack Ma Ant Group. Got to make him sort of go away because he's competing. So with him eliminated, it's time to move forward with the China digital currency thing. And I'm surprised that the Wall Street Journal didn't talk more about the whole Jack Ma, let's make him disappear aspect. They mentioned it a little, but not
I'm
really.
Surprised by that.
So,
yeah. So they're doing it, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that. And of course, that is, they're not even making any secrets about it. It's about control and tracking.
yeah,
Yeah.
They want to be in charge of all transactions in the country.
not Jack Ma.
Yeah. And if you're LinkedIn right now, you got to feel like one of the luckiest companies in the universe, because how fortuitous for you that almost the exact same headline is running for a way more famous company right now. You're totally going to fly this under the radar because it is literally almost the exact same story.
Hackers scraped data from 500 million. Is he going to say Facebook users? No, it's LinkedIn users. About 2/3 of the platform's user base, and they have been posted online for sale. So while the Facebook 500 million is completely free now, anybody can download it. It's no longer locked up behind a paywall on the dark web. LinkedIn, that one's still behind a paywall.
But what is your prediction? How long will it remain behind a paywall?
Not very long.
It took Facebook a year,
Yeah.
right? So I'd say less. I'd say that horizon begins to lessen with everyone.
If you've been following this program for a long time, you already deleted your LinkedIn account because we've told you repeatedly they're horrible.
I was going to say, who has a LinkedIn account? But in this economy where people are desperate for jobs, I bet a lot of people still do.
I've resisted it, but I feel like if I ever need to look for another job, it's really going to bite me in the ass.
Yeah.
It'd
It's
be
a good
fun.
way to
And so-
get your name out, unfortunately.
No.
I'm going to keep resisting it. But,
yeah,
you know,
I mean, I
there's-
don't need it now, but
there's the specter of it out there. Sometimes I get those like invite emails from people who tried to add me on there, you
Yeah.
know, where it spams you. And I feel bad about just ignoring them. But at the same time, come on. They should feel bad, but they don't understand that. And this one is certainly nothing new. I mean, we've known about this forever, and we know that it's bad, but no one ever says it's really all that bad. And most of the companies do it. But the EU, I guess, is getting bored.
Ars Technica reports that Google is illegally tracking Android users according to a new complaint. This outlines how it's using their advertising ID. And yeah, I think that if the argument put forth in the lawsuit is sound under EU law, it's a pretty solid looking case, because it literally, that's how it works. Like, that's how it was designed. Like, what they describe as being the problem is literally how it's built.
Well, one big thing the Biden administration is doing is they are, following the whole climate legislation type of stuff, and they're going to cut the fleet capacity for exhaust. I got to go back to these stupid four-cylinder modes.
They're going to go all electric. I thought all new purchases must be electric.
That's for the capital.
Oh, okay.
But this is for the commercial fleets.
Oh, okay.
Like the stuff they're selling us, your whole fleet has to be under a certain mile per gallon. So for every decent car you make, you're going to make a trash car, or maybe several trash cars. And we don't really do it here because, Kentucky's real red and we don't care about that kind of thing. But in a lot of places, like California is famous for, you got to go and get your car inspected, and your exhaust has to pass. And if it doesn't pass, you can't drive. But what if you can't get it tested because there is nobody to test it?
Georgia emission system shut down after cyberware attack. Pretty sure that they meant ransomware?
Oh, yeah, cyberware.
yeah.
Have they been playing too much Cyberpunk 2077? Oh, they got a ping. Oh.
There's a guy with the gorilla arms upgrade just tearing that place apart. So, yeah, people have been trying to, you get that little, I imagine you get a card in the mail and they say, hey, you got to come in. It's your time. And they try to set it up and sorry, nothing's working.
They are giving people a waiver at least, but that's still more headache and bureaucracy than is tolerable.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
awful.
Emissions is $25. You can imagine the revenue loss. We have employees that are out of work.
And they did 100 a day. 100 a day at 25 a copy. And now that's all just gone. So, yeah, that's a lot of money on the table. Encrypted messaging is getting hotter and hotter, and everybody wants it, but you have to be very careful to investigate if your encrypted messaging app is actually doing what they claim to do. But you also have to be careful about doing that.
Polish blogger sued after revealing security issue in encrypted messenger. So he found an issue and he said, look at this thing, look at how it works. And then they changed how the application worked and said, no, that's false. That's not how it works at all.
So it was when you were doing a certain thing, I think you were inviting people, it used a non-secure URL, autofwd.com, no certificate, and by going through that, it would allow you to, that site could be SQL injected to catch the outgoing invitations. So it was basically wide open if you knew what you're doing. This company said, we never did that, quietly changed the code, according to this researcher, and is now suing him for ever suggesting that they did. But the company that they were using for the actual encryption, UseCrypt, admitted that they didn't have any actual encryption, and they've gone out of business.
Let's see how that lawsuit works out for him. That's what happens when a megalomaniac gets in charge of a project.
If we have any Polish viewers, how likely is this to do anything in your courts? I don't know what Polish court is like.
Is it possible that it would get thrown out as completely frivolous? Because that'd be nice.
And also, this is one of those cases where how likely is the judge to understand any of this?
Yeah.
Are Polish judges basically like our judges? because the
Almost
chances are
certainly.
probably not good. This is a terrifying idea. One thing about it, one of the most terrifying things when you work in this business is an error that you can never explain. And these are a lot of errors that you can never explain.
Yeah.
Also, this movie writes itself. Hit me up on a consulting fee. I will write this movie for you.
Cosmic rays causing 30,000 network malfunctions in Japan each year. So this is NTT. It's like, this is just, why is the computer erroring randomly? It turns out there's nothing wrong with it. It just got hit by a high energy particle, or a communication line got hit by a high energy particle, and then there was, something got flipped or changed or whatever.
And it turns out these are tiny, 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 tiny little reactions. It's like oxygen and something else that it reacts with. Nitrogen. But the smaller we get our transistors, the more susceptible they are to this.
Yep. That's why a lot of the space stuff, a lot of the new stuff on Mars, which we'll talk about later, has really old lithographies because the transistors are enormous and slightly more hardened for radiation as a result.
What if this hit a Bitcoin transaction?
I think the network would reject it.
Hopefully. But the movie is obviously, this starts to escalate. We start getting more and more of these.
Yeah.
And there's one guy working in like a radio telescope somewhere in the middle of nowhere by himself, and he knows about it. He understands it. That's, of course, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And then he has to try to get to the president. But on his way to the president, he keeps getting brushed aside because more and more terrible things are happening.
I thought you were going to go with like the AT&T censoring algorithm, which we'll talk about later. Has like gone completely crazy, and its bits are getting flipped, and it's just censoring all sorts of random things now. And we're just like, okay, the computer says that's bad now. I guess we'll just roll with it.
Or the vaccine passport, and you get thrown in a FEMA camp. And along those lines, boy, should you be terrified by this. Now, the good news is this is not functional yet, but how quick are all of the law enforcement agencies going to just pour money
Clamor
into
for this?
Immediately.
They love
it's
it.
going to be immediate. Scientists show how you can collect DNA from the air. They were able to, pull some DNA out of the air, basically, and figure out that somebody had been in a room because of remnants they left behind.
So they had some mole rats, favorite of many video game enemies. And they had these mole rats, and they just had them in a room, and they tested from 5 to, 20 minutes of exposure and collected them. And they did get a lot of human DNA floating around in there, but they could definitely say this specific mole rat was hanging out in this room.
What happens if you borrow somebody's jacket and then ruffle it while you're in the room and then leave because, a lot of dust, like a lot of dust in your house and dust especially in your bedroom and around your bed, that's just dead skin cells. And it's easy to imagine that some of those would be airborne.
Or not even borrow somebody's, because that would have a tie to you. Go to a restaurant during the winter. On your way out, just grab a jacket, random jacket.
And then later, ruffle
Shake
that.
At the crime scene.
You see people like walking up to older people and scraping them a little bit. Let me just get a little bit of this.
I've noticed that older people tend to be sloughing off cells at an alarming rate.
GitHub has a little bit of a problem, and it has to do with their GitHub actions, their automation that they'll let you set up. And we talked about this problem before, and it was like, well, this is a theoretical problem. We don't know that anybody's ever used it yet, but now perhaps someone has been using it all along.
GitHub investigating crypto mining campaign abusing its server infrastructure. So this is why we can't have nice things. Somebody automated some actions that would run with like the maximum CPU allowed or the maximum timeout. And their job is not testing their program, but it's actually mining cryptocurrency. That's not very nice.
Pretty brilliant. But you don't want that if you're GitHub.
If you can arrest that guy for bribing the tech support in another country, that also ought to be the same level of a crime.
But it's going to be harder to pin it on one person, don't you think?
Yeah.
We'll see. This is a terrifying tale, and I don't like his argument, but at the same time, he is right. They have been doggedly telling him this since its inception. That's kind of what they base the whole existence of it around. And it's their big argument in the court cases.
Yeah, over under on this being immediately incorporated into the Epic lawsuit.
Oh yeah.
You're saying that as if it's in the future, but this was done. When did this come out? This was on the 30th.
End of March, yeah.
They've already got like 5 different versions of this drafted.
He believed that the Apple App Store was safe. Then a fake app stole his life savings in Bitcoin.
$660,000.
So he had a Trezor hardware wallet, and he was looking for the Trezor companion app in the App Store. Well, there was a fake app in the App Store that would steal stuff.
And they point out that it's pretty common to get these apps confirmed as one thing and then transition them to something else. And that seems to be what was done here. So the walled garden. And he figured out they spend an average of 20 minutes vetting an app. Maybe not enough time.
Sometimes they said less than that. Sometimes they were approved within a minute.
So, terrifying. $660,000.
Whew.
And he was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
He had like one of those really secure
Hardware tokens.
Oh, it's tough.
I trusted Apple. And it's like, I like his comments on Apple because, like, once you peel back the thin veneer to actually dig into what Apple is doing, it's really hard to support them. And it makes, like, all the whole, like, oh, we're high and mighty on the advertising side of thing all the more egregious because you look at their actions in other things and you see that they are just as deviant as all other companies. And it somehow makes them worse because they take the position, you know, the white knight position. But in actuality, they're really terrible.
But at the same time, I've told a lot of people, and I've stopped doing it because you get a really negative social reaction from it, about what they're doing with an Apple device. And they're like, come on. It's, and I think that's...
Isn't that a little paranoid?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of probably the idea that this guy had.
Yeah.
And boy, does he regret it. Unfortunate. Although, do we owe... Could you not be expected to figure out that a company is lying to you before you do business with them? I mean, that is a burden that individuals should have to carry.
Yeah, to an extent.
This one, I hate to do just tweets as stories, but I couldn't find anybody
There's
covering
literally
this.
nothing.
And why not? Because this is blatant hypocrisy. Blatant.
Yesterday, the ACLU updated their privacy statement to finally disclose that they share constituent information with service providers like Facebook for targeted advertising, flying in the face of the org's public advocacy statements.
How many times has the ACLU sued Facebook?
Yeah.
Oh, but we need to advertise to people that would be interested in that. This is a long Twitter thread, and honestly, I don't know what to make of it. But it's something that I'm going to be watching over the next few weeks.
Well, it's how can you not say that this is just pure, doing one thing and saying another?
It sure looks that way.
It's notable that they published this on April 1st as well. So when they get the backlash, they'll be like, oh, it was a joke.
I don't think it's a joke. We do have, in business, we have several instances of bad April Fool's jokes. This would be one of them, but I don't think it is.
I don't think it is either.
Yeah, I
true.
don't think it is either. But
what was our runtime for this epic episode? Because we were it felt a little rushed.
it's like 45 minutes.
48.
Okay, we didn't do too bad. We'll see you tomorrow with more business.
Tomorrow's going to be a lot of stories.
Tomorrow's going to
So,
be long. Yeah.
If you want a long news session, Wednesday session will be massive.
All right. We'll see you guys then. Loud truck, goodbye. Bye.